Hello and welcome to another video or episode. So today we're continuing and almost finishing the series on setting up a forest school business. So we've covered a whole lot of things before. I think this is now part 7, likely part 7 of 8, so the penultimate episode. And today we're talking kit. What equipment do you need to start out a forest school from scratch? Now the idea, as with many things, is to have that minimal viable product, to get the basic equipment you need just to get off the ground, to start running things, to see whether there's actually enough interest and audience that this will be successful. So I'm not going to actually talk very much about this. I'm going to let past me about a year ago talk this, because I actually recorded an entire video on exactly the kit that I would get, the 10 items that I would be the first things that I get if I lost all of my forest school equipment and I had to start again. So that still is relevant as it is now. It's exactly the same as the one I choose. So I thought, well, why reinvent the wheel? I'll just add it in here, and with that, I'll just roll straight into that. So this is past me telling you all about the forest school equipment you need to get started. So you don't actually need a lot of equipment to start a forest school. I mean, part of forest school is making use of the resources around you. There's a number of different things you can do, you can make. It's only really limited by your own and the children's creativity. So yes, I'd encourage people starting out to try and make do with what they have, where they are, and do the best you can with the resources you have. Some of the best quality sessions I've ever had have been with very little equipment and focusing the energy and curiosity of the children. But there are a few items that I would definitely look at getting, just because they offer the greatest variety of sessions and they extend learning the most. Now these are my personal items based on my experience. You might disagree, and I'd love to hear about that. Now I'm just going to switch tacks immediately on that first bit, that you don't need a lot of equipment. There is one thing you absolutely do need, and I would say out of all of the essentials, this is the essentialist. If you are running a session where you have responsibility about others, so whether the parents are there or not, first aid kit should be part of your equipment that you take anywhere. If you're taking a group of people on a walk, if you lead a cycle ride, if you are inviting people over to a stall, this is the bare minimum you have to have. If you don't have a first aid kit, I would say you're not being a responsible professional. So, number 1, first aid kit. And I have a link to various videos that I've done about a lot of these items before. I'll link them up above and also in the description. Yeah, number 1 item, first thing to get a decent first aid kit. And the training to go with it goes without saying. If you're running forest schools, you should be first aid trained, and that will also inform a lot of what you put in your first aid kit. What you put in your first aid kit will be set by your own personal level of training within first aid. The second item on my list is a shelter. Now this feeds in just like with the first aid kit. If you want to run sessions throughout the year, you are going to need somewhere that will keep people dry, or at least allow us to keep kit dry. So unless you want to spend a lot of time drying off kit all the time or cancelling sessions, a shelter is really important. Now, when you're starting out, you don't necessarily need to get the big 5x5 tarp or the massive parachute. If you have a large group, you might want to dive straight in with that, and it's a good investment for a session. But I started out with just a 3x3. It just gave us enough space to put a bit of kit under, somewhere we could huddle under if it was absolutely pouring down, or just somewhere dry, just to have a small craft activity. So second thing on my list, and something that I consider really important, I take to every session, is a shelter. Now this is where we might start heading into some disagreements. I mean, first aid kit and shelter are pretty much, I reckon, going to be universally acknowledged as important piece of kit. But this piece of kit is one of the most valuable ones I have for the type of sessions I run. I run sessions where I primarily have to set up in a public park, so everything needs to be dragged in and set out. This makes having a cart really useful. It saves so much strain on your back and your arms, and really makes it easier to transport a lot of kit quite a distance. You can also use it to move around stumps on and off site, pack up whole lots of equipment, throw kids in. It's a really useful piece of equipment. So if you ever have to travel with kit, I'd thoroughly recommend getting one of these carts. I've got this one. It doesn't fold down, but it's very sturdy. I've hauled like 30 kilo logs around on it. It's coped just fine. Very handy piece of kit. If you're going more off the beaten track and you're trying to condense everything down, you might be able to fit everything in a rucksack. But for this third item, it's some way to transport your kit to and from site. Like I said, if you're on a site where everything is set up and you get to keep all of your equipment on site, this may not be as necessary. But if you're moving stuff around, absolutely one of the best purchases I've ever made. My third item is a fire steel. These are a great way to teach fire lighting, and fire, I think, is a very important part of forest school, and something that really captures children's excitement. So for my third item, I'd say a good fire steel. When you're just starting out, you can just work one-to-one with children and you can just have one fire steel. Obviously, if you have a couple more, then you could actually do more, but just starting out, a fire steel. So these aren't as dangerous as matches or lighters, and they involve the children quite tactilely. So the Light My Fire steels are quite good. These ones are quite decent, but you can get everyday Amazon style. So these type you'd find on Amazon, or the bushcraft store fire lighters are also quite good. Fire steels also quite good. So get yourself a decent fire steel. It'll last a good long time and you'll get a whole lot of enjoyment out of it, and the kids will get something, I believe, of value. Now for my fourth item, I'm kind of going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to say a fire pit is a good fourth item. Particularly if you can't have fires in the ground. So if you're working in public spaces or in a lot of forests, they won't allow you to have fires on the ground or a permanent fire pit. If you're working on private land, there's a good chance you will be able to, in which case you won't need a fire pit. They're handy, they raise everything up, they contain all of the embers, making it easy to deal with after the session, and they are really handy to use. So fire pit, but then as coming along with a fire pit and thinking about safety equipment for using a fire, if you have a fire pit, it's probably a good idea to have a pair of fire gloves as well. These are just flame retardant gauntlets, just thick leather with a little of heat-proof fabric in there. These aren't designed to protect you all the way from fire, but they do offer a bit of protection for moving coals around, or if you need to move the fire pit itself. And then in addition to that, having a bucket or container of some sort. If you don't have running water on your site, if you need to deal with burns, you're going to want somewhere that you can submerge the burn, because it's usually going to be on the hands. Submerge the burn or keep it under running water to then help cool the burn. So I'm just going to say for this item, it's going to be a fire kit. So fire bowl, gloves, bucket. For my 6th item to accompany the fire pit, I'd say you need a good kettle. Either a Kelly kettle, so something that you can light a fire in and manage outside of the fire, or a kettle that you can actually hang over the fire and keep on the fire. Hot water is a great morale booster for particularly during the autumn and winter months when it gets a little bit colder. Having water for hot water for hot chocolate, to wash hands, to wash up dishes, whatever. It's a really good idea to have some way of creating hot water, or carrying it with you. So an alternative to that would be a good flask or jug for carrying hot water. And if you can find one, they'll last you long enough, keep things warm enough, so you can fill it in the morning and then bring it to forest school and you have it throughout the day. That's pretty good. But I'd say either a good kettle or flask. Kettle would be preferred because you can always reheat more water. So that is 6th item. A good kettle. Now once we've got a fire pit, we've got a kettle, we're going to need something to go with those, which is water. Now water is not always available on site, and likely you'll want to carry it in. So having a good quality water carrier is really nice. So these Ridge Monkey water containers are pretty good. I've seen some others around as well. The good solid long lasting water container is my 7th item. Bring water on site for hand washing, for putting out fires, for boiling for tea and hot chocolate, so on. It's really valuable to have some water. So 7th item, good quality water carrier. Now that we've taken care of our basic needs through, we've got first aid kit in case of emergencies, we've got carts to move things around, we've got shelter to keep us dry, we've got a fire to keep us warm, kettles to boil water so that we have water to drink, we've got our water carrier, and then for our 8th item we start moving into tools. I think for my 8th item would be a knife, a sheath knife like this Mora. Mora Companion make some really good ones. They're quite cheap, cost effective. You do get ones with blunt tips, so on. I do talk a bit more about that in my video on knife skills, the different types. You can see just a good solid sheath knife. This will allow you to do more with your activities. Even if it's just you using it, means you can whittle skewers, cut string, just make feather sticks, all sorts of uses for a sheath knife. So 8th item, sheath knife. Now after a knife, I think the next tool is got to be a saw, like this bow saw. These are really handy to have for cutting hazel poles, to use for supports for shelters, making elder beads, cutting firewood to length, making wood cookies, wood discs. The uses really are endless. Good quality saw. That is my 9th item. Then moving on, for my final item I have an axe or a splitting tool of some sort, because chances are if you're buying in firewood you're going to need to split it down into more manageable sizes, which is a great activity for children to engage in. And having either an axe or a froe or an appropriate splitting tool, I'd say is really good to have as an essential item for starting out. And if we combine it with our kind of triumvirate of tools, we have knife, axe and saw, we can build most things. So you can make mallets out of that. You can saw through the side, split down, and then carve the corners off to make a mallet handle. Actually fine. We can make elder beads, as I said. We can make spoons, probably not spoons without a crook knife, but things like spatulas. We can make all sorts of stuff. So we've got basic tools. Say if you're just starting out, one set is probably all you need. You probably don't have the confidence yet, if you're just starting out, to be able to work with a large group with tools. So just stick to 1-to-1, 1-to-2, and just start getting comfortable using these tools. That is honestly where I would go with tools and equipment. If I was starting out, say horrors, van got stolen, my kit storage burnt down, whatever, I'd probably start off with those 10 items. I've got first aid kit, shelter, first aid cart, fire steel, fire pit, kettle, water carrier, and then those 3 tools at the end. That will help you really get started. And as I say, the resources are out there. Make the best use of your space. Think about, okay, if I want to suspend a kettle over the fire, rather than buying a tripod, let's see if we can make some out of hazel. We can cut down the hazel, we can tie with knots, we may well need some string. How can we make string? We could make some nettle string, we could twist some brambles up. We could start thinking, particularly if you want to engage the older children. Bringing in resources doesn't have as much appeal as creating them out of the space that you're in. So just think about how you can use the space. Those 10 essential items will really get you started. And there we go. I hope that has got you thinking on what you need to get started, and hopefully given you a couple of prompts. If you'd like some more kit ideas, I will see if I can put together another specific video on that, but it's an entirely different thing. Where I'd go next, but there's probably depends on your age group, and it's a lot less relatable to different setups. So for example, if you're running a session that's primarily early years, your equipment stash will look very different for that one that's running for adults. So this is just an introduction into the kit that you need. So we'll go on to the next, we'll probably have another 1 or 2 episodes after this. Next time we'll be tackling getting paid and the systems you need to think about, and we'll likely finish it off with expectations for your first year or 2 years or even 3 years in business. So look forward to that. And that is the point that my mic ran out of battery and started making a terrible whining noise. So this is why I've switched to the studio and my microphone. So on YouTube you get to watch me mouthing at the camera, so sorry about that. Anyway, I have some CPD days coming up if you're looking to get upskilled in your forest school practice. I've got one coming up at the end of August. We'll be covering tops and knots in lots of detail, as well as a tool skill share. And then I've got another one on the cards for October, and we've also got the relaunch of my tops and knots course coming up in September. So look out for all of that. With that, thank you so much for watching and listening. Remember to make the most of every day. I'll catch you all next time.